Hi friends, Lisa Arana here, and thank you so much for joining me for another Assemble This video. Today I am all about creating a heartfelt card to celebrate a new furry family member. I'll show you how I customized this adorable pup with Copic coloring, paired it with some playful pattern papers, and simple touches for a darling design. So let's get started and assemble this card. I have my images pre-stamped on some cream-colored cardstock, which I believe is from Basil, and I use Memento ink because I know that that is Copic friendly, and it has a nice deep rich black color. And then I pulled out some Copic markers in E-tones. And what I love about this new line of stamps from Unity Stamp Company is that you can customize the look of your dogs. This is my pup, Miles, and so I'm going for his coloring. I left a line on his forehead and then I left his body with a nice big patch of white. And I'm using E50 to lay down that outline of color. And then I come in with E33 to deepen and richen up that tone and create a bit of shadowing. I'm using a flicking motion because I like to use that when coloring fur, and it also kind of blends and creates texture in the fur of the dog when I keep layering my colors. So I came in with the E33 and I'm just going to blend that out with the E50, and then I'll just keep layering up and deepening up my layers of color. Alcohol markers will soak into the paper, and the more layers that you add, they start to blend easier and they'll just kind of work into each other more. I am using a light hand. I'm not being very forceful with adding a lot of ink, but adding lots of layers will really deepen up the coloring and really layer upon layer and do all the work of blending for you. Now, I did not have a mid-tone between these two colors, so I'm using my E50 to pick up some color from the E30, and that'll help blend those two layers together so I have a more even transition between the two colors. And then I'm just using that E50 to really blend everything out and get a nice overall base before I come in and really add a pop of shadow and dimension to the image. Now I'm going to use that E33 and start deepening up that shadow. I'm using the lines in the stamp as a guide. They're there to really give me a hint. And so I'm just layering that over my base. I'm not going to blend this too much because I really want it to start to deepen and really create that shadow effect. We need that contrast between that light base and adding in this really deep shadow to really create dimension in our image. I'm just going to keep working on deepening up the shadow. When I think of light coming, I'm thinking of it kind of coming, I guess, straight down. So I'm creating a dark shadow at the base of where his nose is kind of creasing and kind of coming out at us. So at the base of all my blocks of color, I'm adding a bit more shadow. I'm using the lines in the stamp to create that shadow as well and just going over that. Now his face did have a bunch of gray in it, gray and black, and I'm not feeling confident in my coloring abilities, so I'm going to skip that. I'm just going to use the browns to kind of create that shadow and look for his face. Maybe when I get a little braver, I'll come back in, but it was looking so good, I didn't want to ruin it. And now with his body, it just doesn't take as much work because all those lines are already built into the stamp. So I'm just gonna create that blended effect, kind of blend in those two colors a little bit more by using that technique of picking up the E33 with the E50 to kind of blend out those lines a little bit more. And then I just go back and forth, adding different layers until I'm pretty happy with it. Again, I do want some dimension in that shadow, so some of that E50 I'm not going to blend as much. And you can tell in the stamp that the left side is so much darker. The light is kind of coming straight down, well, coming from the right down to the bottom left. and kind of straight down. That's how I'm envisioning it. So everything in the top right is going to be lighter and everything in the bottom left is going to be darker. So anything that kind of sits up and above is going to be lighter, and then there's going to be a nice dark shadow right below that. And I'm trying to create definition in that face where I'm creating my own shape of color in his face. And so that's why I'm kind of darkening up those corners there. I came in with some E35 to really deepen up those shadows. We need some dimension. It's getting too flat. So we need to add some shadow and some dimension to this little guy. Again, I'm using the lines of the stamp, and kind of anything that's sitting below something else will get a hint of E35 to really deepen up that shadow. I'm not blending this out very much. I may do a little bit on the edge so it's not so stark, but this is what's going to really create dimension in your stamp and really help it to come alive. Our next layer of shadow is E57, and I'm using just the tiniest bit of this. If I go too much, it's going to really create too much darkness. This is just a hint of a shadow. And it's a thin line really closest to where things might be sitting on top of something, or using the corners of his face to really help them pop underneath his chin, on the base of his tail. Those little things are what's kind of the darkest shadow and behind something, and that will really help his little face pop. And again, I might blend out the edge just a little bit, just so there's not this really stark line. And it kind of helps blend up into the image as well. While I finish up the last bit of coloring, I'd like to introduce you to Winston. He is a new line of stamps from Unity Stamp Company. It is called Rescue Tales. It's going to be a bunch of different animals, dogs, cats, bunnies, lizards, I don't know, anything that you could rescue will be added to this line over the next year. And 10% of proceeds are going to be donated to rescue facilities. So it's really nice to be able to support Unity Stamp Company and then also support rescuing animals as well. So I'm just finishing up adding a bit of color to the heart, just using two colors, R22 and then R27. And then this is the final look of the coloring result. Now I did die cut it down with a Decal and Stitches die, and then I decided to try adding some highlights. I think next time I might skip that, but they're also kind of cute. It adds a bit of a whimsical look to the image. Now I am going to ink blend every layer, mainly because my pattern papers have a vintage kind of mixed media look to them. And so I wanted all my layers to blend together and have the same basic brown tone to them. So I'm using Vintage Photo Distress Ink to ink blend around all the edges, just using a light touch with my ink blending brush and then going around the edge and then picking it up and doing the sides of the panel as well. This is the Love Struck pattern paper from Unity Stamp Company. I just love this color combo. It's kind of like craft red and teal all together, which just makes my heart so super happy. So I die cut those down, and then I'm just going to layer them up in kind of a wonky layout. I'll lift up each edge of these bottom pattern papers. I like to just add glue to the center so I can lift those up and add a bit of dimension. And then I'm just positioning those two pattern paper panels behind the pup to frame him. Again, lifting those sides up. And before I add my pup panel, I'm going to wrap some twine around my card front and then just tie that in a simple little bow. I'm going to slide that over so when I put my panel next to it, it'll have room that the panel's still in the center of my card. Added some foam tape above and below where that twine is so it doesn't create a bulge from the foam being over top that twine. And then I'm just going to pop him down right in the center, and then I'll fiddle with my bow and trim off those tails. And here is the finished card. I just love how the layers of pattern paper add so much charm, and that I can customize the puppy to match the colors of any dog, such as mine. It's such a wonderful way to celebrate a new furry family member. Thanks for creating with me. I'll see you again soon for another video. Bye.